Welcome to episode 64.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
Finally, warmer weather is here, and there is no better time than right now to book your vacation getaway with 3D Travel Company. Head on over to our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side. They give a complimentary quote so you can get an idea of what it will cost to take your summer vacation. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips, booked and traveled by the end of 2017. Hurry and book today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey you guys, this is a special shout out to all my listeners around the world. Who Did That Voice is now heard in over 78 different countries, and I can't thank you guys enough. Here in the USA and abroad, thank you for listening to Who Did That Voice. Keep listening and sharing with your friends. Hey all you Marvel and Spider-Man fans out there, Who Did That Voice is doing an entire month with cast and crew from the 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series, which aired on Fox Kids. You won't want to miss the month of June on Who Did That Voice. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest voiced the Insanomaniac Cletus Kasady, aka Carnage, on the 1994 Spider-Man the Animated Series.
What in the name of...
It is my master, Dormammu, who confers this gift upon you, Kasady.
Gift?
Remember, you wanted the same power that I offered Eddie Brock.
This is it?
But to enjoy it, you must first swear to serve Dormammu forever.
No problem, man. He sounds like my kind of guy. Let me have the power. What do I do?
This is a symbiote, a living organism. It must bond with you.
And then I get to be like Brock?
Similar, but different. As different as you are from Brock. Once you bond, it will reflect your hatred for humanity, your lust for destruction.
I'll take it.
It must take you.
Come on. What are you waiting for? I am yours, man. We're gonna wreak glorious carnage throughout the land.
Carnage, eh? I like the sound of that. You promised us carnage. Deliver it.
What's wrong? Kasady is gone. There is only carnage.
War Machine! He reacts to loud noise!
I've got just the thing. A concentrated sonic disruptor blast.
No! Whatever you do, don't stop! Who are you?
Your offspring.
Offspring? Yes, we recall replicating.
Our flame-headed friend sent us to get this. Call us Carnage.
Carnage? There's another symbiote? Sorry to interrupt the reunion.
We hoped we'd run into you again.
You know me? Kasady!
Think of the damage we can do now, man!
Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice? Today on the show we have Scott Cleverdon. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Trenton Larkin, as I live and breathe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Am I detecting a Scottish accent?
Yes, I am. I'm from Edinburgh, yeah.
Okay, well, it's very...
Well done.
Thank you. Well, it's there, but at first I was thinking I was hearing an Irish, and then I listened a little more, and I was like, no, that's definitely Scottish, but it's kind of subtle. It's not super there, but it's there, you know?
Well, yeah, I lived I haven't lived in the United Kingdom for over 25 years, and I haven't lived in Scotland for slightly longer.
Okay.
And I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and about 2 or 3 years of that in London. And I've lived in Spain for the last 13, 14 years.
That's
so
crazy.
I spend most of my time making Spanish, if you could possibly imagine it.
So do you have a kind of an accent when you speak Spanish, or does it come through kind of fluent like from the country there, or?
No, I mean, I speak Spanish pretty fluently, but no, I have an accent. I mean, I can try my damnedest to get rid of it, but I've always got something.
A Scottish Spanish, that's different.
Well, one of the reasons that my accent is the way it is I've always been I've always had the need to be understood.
Yeah.
Right. And the trouble is, if you speak with a very, very and I've rebelled against my accent from a very young age, because the trouble with any accent. Where are you from, Trent?
I'm from Texas, originally born and raised, but I've lived all over the world actually. So.
Right. Whereabouts in Texas?
I was from Dallas, Texas area.
Right. Are you like from the good part of Dallas or the bad part of Dallas?
The good part.
Right. Like, just think of the bad part of town.
Yeah.
Right. Just think about all those guys who talked in the way that you heard them and you went, "Oh Jesus, that's trouble." Where you went, "Oh no, I think I might have to go to a different bar or whatever it is."
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of accents all over the world, all in every single country. And what that accent is about being accepted. It's about being the lowest common denominator, and it's about inspiring lack of understanding.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do, it's like you're studying psychology right now, aren't you?
I actually graduated last May with a associate's in psychology. But yeah, I did study psychology.
Well, one of the things that you need to do in terms is always to be understood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now there's accents which are part of where we're from, but there's also cultural accents which is part of what we're from. I believe, and there's a great amount of most people will fall into the standard way of expressing yourself, and then there's everybody else, and we have to be understood on our own terms in the wider scale of things. And if you go back to Texas, you're down there, you're doing it's all going to come flying back. It's going to be there again. You're going to be there.
You sounded like Blake Shelton.
Well, that I'm Scottish. What you expect?
That's awesome. Your Southern is good, man.
Yeah, well, all of what's very interesting is for British people, the Southern accent's one of the easier accents.
Really?
Yeah, because it comes from a certain degree of tension and a certain degree of and there's more sounds to it.
That's cool. That's awesome. I had no clue how diversified you are as a person, until I looked more into your background, and then hearing your accent, I'm like, this is sweet, because you're actually my second international guest. I had my first from the UK, but getting international guests for me has been a little bit more challenging, just because sometimes the time difference or whatever, but I'm super excited to be chatting with you today.
Well, no worries. I'm always very interested, because the other thing that I've been doing for the past 15 years is I teach film acting, and as George Bernard Shaw said, if you want to learn, read. If you want to understand, teach. And if you've ever done any teaching, and I'm sure you have, you must have done some teaching.
Oh, I have. Yeah, I have.
You will realize that when you're teaching, you have more revelations about the thing that you're teaching than you could ever have if you were just reading about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because sometimes when you're teaching, you learn something too.
Oh no, absolutely. I regularly I'll go, oh my goodness, I just came up with something I'd never thought of before. Okay, stop the presses, everybody. All right, this is my guru moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I have because of voiceovers and because I work with people and I coach people in English and I coach people in their acting, that I've come to all of these conclusions, and I work from the point of view of science, not from the point of view of faith, which is really the difference between working on camera and working in the theater. In theater, you need faith, and on camera, you really have to apply scientific principles to it. It's to a real reason why people do what they do, why they decided to do what they do, how they develop their skills at doing what they do, and it's got a great deal to do with psychology. Anyway, so. What else did you discover about my illustrious, infamous past that seemed interesting to you?
Well, Batman, the new Batman animated adventures, and Gargoyles, where you played John Castaway.
That was really my first voiceover job in LA.
Was it? Okay. Well, we'll definitely dive into that. One thing that super surprised me was a game that I absolutely loved playing on PlayStation 1. It was Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles. And
that was me, yeah.
I was like, dude, I played the crap out of that game when I was a PlayStation 1 gamer because it was so good. And you could play multiple colored lightsabers, not just green and blue and red. It was like pink and yellow and orange and all kinds of crazy colors. And then this is not voiceover, but one thing I've learned in my time of interviewing people is that you have to be an actor first and foremost before you typically ever get into voiceover. And so I wanted to speak just a little bit about the Borgia, because my wife is a hardcore fan and it's kind of a homage to her. Plus I got into it watching it with her and I loved it. So
right. Well, okay. Right. This is the important thing you got to remember. Okay. There's two, right? There's two of them. One is Jeremy Irons, right? Who plays the Pope. And the other one has John Doman from The Wire, and he plays the Pope. I'm in the one with John Doman, not the one with Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, I believe so. He's also the one that played on Gotham, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank God for that. No, because sometimes people will go, "Oh my God, I love that show," and I have to go, "I'm sorry, man, I'm not in that one."
No. Yeah, because I always try to do my research.
I don't feel bad. I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Really, I'm really sorry. You had a really good point 5 seconds ago, and I just crapped all over it.
No, I always try to do my research so I know what I'm talking about. But then all of a sudden I was like, wait, do I know what I'm talking about?
Well, the other interesting thing about that show is that my wife plays Vanozza, who is the Pope's consort.
Oh, wow.
My wife is Assumpta Serna, and she's made over 100 movies and speaks 6 languages.
Holy crap.
And she has voted on the Oscars since 1992. She's one of the most prestigious and well-respected actors and most international actors here in Spain.
Holy crap, dude. I'm like beyond, like my jaws dropped on the floor and I'm like, wow.
If you want to look up Assumpta, nip over to your computer and look up Assumpta Serna. It's the way it sounds in IMDb, and you'll have a quick see. I mean, she was in terms of things that she's done, like Comic-Con type stuff. She was in whatchamacallit, in The Craft.
Oh wow.
She was in we did a show together called Sharp's Rifles.
Okay.
Which you'll either know or not know. I have a strange Doctor Who connection as well.
No way. Okay, well, we might briefly go into that too then. Well, man, I mean, I was just watching Spider-Man, and I just came along across the, Venom Returns Carnage episodes and was like, dude, I wonder who this guy is that plays Carnage. And I looked you up, and then the second thing I saw was Batman Beyond playing Jack from the Royal Flush Gang, and I'm sitting here going, holy crap, this is cool. And so then doing all the research I did today, I found all these other shows, and I mean, I was just like, wow, dude. I always get surprised by the actors. I like them for one thing, and then find out there's a ton of other stuff I'm into. So it's
what I was really cut up about is I moved away from LA in the exact moment that they started doing the animated series of the Clone Wars.
Oh, that stinks.
The guy who did Obi-Wan was, he's a brilliant voiceover guy. His name escapes me, but he does everything. I mean, he's just, I take my hat off to him. He's just an amazing guy. But it was just the story of getting Obi-Wan is an interesting one because I used to be with ICM, International Creative Management, for voiceover. How I got there is a different story for another moment. But they said, come in and read for this. So I was given, it was on a cassette tape, if you remember what those were.
I do.
Back in the days, right? It was on a cassette tape, and it was a recording of Ewan McGregor doing some lines from The Phantom Menace. Now, this was before the movie came out or anything like that. So, and then I had to go in and then I had to imitate him. The director, whose name escapes me right now, is a very nice Irish guy. And on the day I started working, I said to him, why did you choose me? And he said, well, it's a slam dunk. I thought I'd get a Scottish guy of roughly the same age to imitate a Scottish guy of roughly the same age imitating Alec Guinness.
That's awesome.
And I went, that makes sense, I suppose. And Ewan McGregor is a contemporary of mine. We're more or less the same age, and we sort of started out together in London at the same time. Although I never met the guy, but we would always sort of like pass each other and be going out for the same sort of jobs. And anyway, that's how I happened. And because I was a kid, I was 8 years old when I saw Star Wars. So I grew up imitating all the voices. So I had that moment when I was standing in front of a microphone in a studio in Hollywood with a script in front of me. And I had to say, "May the Force be with you." Right? Sorry, that's a glass. That's how I used to do Star Wars. I used to do that to entertain my friends. I go, "The Force is strong in this one."
That's awesome.
I tell you, most voiceover people have probably done that. You know,
Yeah.
I have you now. So the thing that I started doing when I was a child, which I think is something that you'll find in common with all voiceover artists, is that we started doing funny voices and imitating people. And basically, that sort of workout at a very early age gave us this ability to do as we got older. It's not the sort of thing that you can start doing when you're a grown-up. It's the sort of thing you start doing when you're a kid. And the reason that you start doing it as a kid, and this is part of the psychology of it, is I believe that we want to be accepted. We want to say things that might be listened to, so we do it in a different voice. And we want to make people laugh. And the reason we want people to laugh is we want them to love us. Because I don't think anybody becomes an actor because they had an incredibly happy childhood. I think that we become actors because we have somewhere, some moment in our upbringing and the development of ourselves as children, there was a deficit of love. We didn't quite get what we needed. So this was a tool that we developed to get that love.
Wow, that's deep.
Mic drop.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Wow. Whew. Okay, wow.
So what is very interesting is one of the things that you'll hear, and I've only listened to a few of the episodes, is you will find that everybody has a story that started out with, indeed, like you and you yourself with your father.
Yeah.
That we discovered that you could change the way you sounded. And that's what makes people improvisers. That's what makes people have a dexterity with their voices. That's what makes people able to do other accents. Is because it's a way of finding a degree of acceptance at any given moment. And what you'll find is voiceover people have a tendency to drop into any one of a million different voices they can do at the drop of a hat. That flexibility and that dexterity they have with their voice, with their accent, with their tone, with all of those different things is much part of their nature as anything else. That their voice becomes this protean way of being understood and being accepted.
Wow, that very deep. And you have such a smooth voice. It's very like relaxing to listen to you, and yet I'm like learning a ton at the same time.
Thanks very much, Trenton.
Wow.
Hi, we're here tonight with Trenton. This afternoon, I should say. But one of the things that the questions, which is the toughest thing for a teacher, but it's the question that you want from any student or anybody you're speaking to, is why. If they come up with a why and you can give them an answer, then we can step forward. And that goes with it. That goes with everything. Why do you want me to do it? I want you to do it for this reason. Why is that like that? It's that for that reason. Why? And a lot of the time people go, why do actors become actors? And after all of these, I've taught 11,000 hours of on-camera training. After 11,000 hours, I can tell you that is pretty much why actors become actors. That is pretty much why voiceover people become voiceover people. And that is pretty much why people become successful.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Scott. I mean, my mind is blown, brother. It's you say some deep things that really get me thinking about stuff I've never necessarily thought about before. So, wow.
It's one of the things that that I find with young people who have a comfortable upbringing is I'm always like, it would have been so much nicer if your childhood was miserable. It would have so much easier. You would have stretched yourself so much if you'd faced rejection from a very early age, not just in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful thing.
One of the first things we like to do when we have a special guest on the show, Scott, is just to find out a little bit about them. And who were you growing up, and how did you get into acting, and more so voice acting?
That's a great question. Ever since I was a child, I've imitated other people's voices. I did that to make my friends laugh. I did it to make my parents laugh. I did it sort of to become accepted. I think there's a thing that children have when their imaginations are slightly bigger than their circumstances, is that they begin to invade those other worlds with their own imaginations. They get into movies and TV shows and comics, and they begin to imitate people left, right, and center. And that was certainly my case. Also, I grew up in Scotland, in a very working class area of Edinburgh called Leith. If you've ever seen Trainspotting, that's where I'm from, and all that implies. And from a very early age, I sort of rebelled against my accent. It's not that I couldn't do it. It's just that the accent, like a lot of very working class places, the accent becomes a way of not expressing yourself in your individuality. It becomes a way of fitting in with everybody else. So that caused me all sorts of problems because they thought I sounded stuck up, or I was trying to sound clever or anything like that, which didn't help the fact that my name was Cleverdon, which meant I was clever clogs or smart ass or any one of a number of other things. But I didn't kind of let that get to me, which is rather peculiar thinking about it. I was a sort of rather precocious and overly, I don't know, I wouldn't say intellectual, but I just remembered stuff when I was a kid. And I'd never considered acting really until I was sort of through my mid-teens. And I had a bunch of other friends, and they were all equally precocious and smart as I was. And I started doing theatre when I was at school, Broughton High School, and it's a place called, it was the youth theatre that we started there, and we started doing proper plays. And we were doing a play called She Stoops to Conquer, a restoration comedy written by Oliver Goldsmith. And my drama teacher, Hugh Patterson, God bless him, he looked up at me one day while I was doing a costume fitting, and out of the corner of his mouth he said, "Scott, have you ever thought about doing this?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Have you ever thought about, being an actor?" I was like, "What?" I said, "You could do this if you wanted to." And that sort of started the wheels in motion. And I did my play, and I loved it, and I came off stage, and I went, this is what I want to do. It was better than any drug or any experience I'd ever had. And so he helped me, and I went to drama school for 3 years, and I studied, and I came out, moved to London. I started working in film and television, which I had no clue about because my training was an entirely classical training. And I muddled my way through that, and eventually I got a job in a thing called Sharp's Rifles, which I did in the Ukraine, where I met my wife, Assumpta Serna, and we fell in love, and we moved to Los Angeles, and I lived there for about 10 years. And I started working more in film and television, and then eventually I worked out how to perform on camera, and I started doing voiceovers. Cut to about 7 or 8 years later, I started teaching film acting with my wife, and we've been doing that ever since, in between working in film and TV and various other things. So that's the acting story, Trent.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for diving into your past, and it's always wonderful to learn about where somebody comes from, because like we were talking about before we started the interview, psychological aspects of psychology are very much, I think, a part, like you were saying, of voiceover, and it's just interesting how those fundamental aspects of psychology play into VO.
Well, one of the things I think is the first way we have of concealing our identities is the way we speak, and all of us do it. All of us, non-actors, actors, everybody changes the way they speak depending on who they're speaking to, whether they're speaking to their teacher, whether they're speaking to their father, whether they're speaking to their minister, whether they're speaking to the cop who's just pulled them over, when they're speaking to the judge.
Yeah.
Everybody modulates and changes the way that they speak. The difference being is that the actor, or the voiceover actor, we're capable of modulating that way we're speaking based on entirely imaginary circumstances. And that's usually something that we started doing from a very early age. We imitated our teachers, we imitated our dad, our uncle, we imitated things that we heard off the TV or things that we heard in movies. It's changed a lot recently because of YouTube and because of DVD, VHS back in the day. What we could do is we could listen to the same thing over and over and over again. We could quote whole reams of text from movies that we loved. And that's really where it all kind of starts, is for the young person, for the kid, is we begin to imitate those movies as part of play. And that some people are better at it than others. But you look at a couple of kids playing cowboys and Indians, you'll see them. They're in the moment. they're worried about the arrow that's coming over the ridge. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that is really, that sense of play is really just what we do as actors or voiceover actors. That's really just an extension of that play. And I think most voiceover performers would agree that it is an absolute privilege to get to play in front of a microphone and then see your work sometime later with images to it. It's stunning. I mean, you feel like a kid. That's really what it is.
Absolutely. Well, you know, when we talk about psychology, it kind of makes me think of a character you played on Spider-Man named Cletus Kasady, who needed a psychologist.
Well, I asked them about that character. I said, is Carnage coming back? And they said, listen, we got a problem with Carnage. I said, what's the problem with Carnage? And they go, well, you know, this is like a Saturday morning cartoon show. And I went, yeah? He said, well, he's a serial killer. And I was like, He said, yeah, I know. It's just it's a tough one to fit into the world, this kind of milieu. Because Cletus Kasady is a red-headed, psychotic serial killer. And that is one of the toughest voiceover jobs I ever had to do. And I'm not sure whether you've spoken to other people who did the animated series. But the director was very, very exacting. And if you've heard my work in it, it's screaming and cackling and more screaming and some more cackling.
He's very psychotic. I actually just finished the entire Spider-Man series today, so
it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, that work. And it's the same thing when you're doing a video game or you know, those sorts of things. You will find yourself for a couple of hours grunting or falling or being killed. You know, I don't know if you've spoken to other people. I haven't listened to all your podcasts, but when you're doing video games, if there's fighting in it, it'll be like, all right, Scott, you're falling off a short wall. Okay, you're falling off a slightly taller wall. Okay, you're falling off a wall and breaking your ankle. You're falling off a wall, breaking both your legs. You're falling off the wall, breaking both your legs and dropping your weapon. Right?
Yeah.
And each one of those things, it's a purely imaginative thing because you're going, ugh, and you go, okay, it's a little bit sharper, yeah, right? You're hurt a little bit more, yeah, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to die, yeah. Okay, you're fighting through, you know. And all of those elements, which will ultimately be used in various different cues in a game or whatever like that, they're coming from nothing. You know? And one of those great things when you see a great game is also I mean, I love video games. My wife loved video games. It's magnificent when you hear a great voice performance, and it's terrible when you hear a bad one. But the Cletus Kasady is possibly the most. I've played a lot of bad guys in my time. An awful lot of bad guys. And this was a pleasure because he was an American, pretty much a New Yorker, and he was an insane, psychotic, possessed by an alien entity, just like Venom, but slightly worse.
You know, and I wondered why Carnage never returned. Now, they returned the character of Carnage Spider-Man or Spider Carnage, but they never brought Cletus back, and I was kind of sad about that because they did have the return of Venom, which was the episode 10 of season 3, and then episode 11 was officially called Carnage. So you were only in those 2 episodes. But yeah. I mean, as a kid, that character was definitely one you couldn't miss. I mean, the episode starts out with him being, you know, trapped in a building by the whole NYPD. And he just says, you know, they're like, let's not cause any problems. And he's like, why not? And throws a grenade out at the cops. You know, I mean, he's just completely bat nuts, you know?
Yeah, well, one of the, I mean, that was the real issue with it, because I mean, I hadn't sat down and read all of the comics. In fact, Jon Semper gave me Maximum Carnage, the book. I still have it here, actually, the book afterwards, and I just started reading. I was like, geez, they can't put this in a Saturday morning cartoon. This is pretty. This guy's an absolute. There's nothing redeemable about this individual.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. So I think that was the real reason that they couldn't put him in there. And it's very interesting because of, you know, Batman Beyond, and the fact that particular point in the 90s, the kind of Saturday morning cartoon sort of thing, was the only way really to kind of get superhero content under the wire.
Okay.
I mean, we had the Batman films, etc., but it wasn't until Tobey Maguire played Spider-Man, at the start of the century, that we kind of went, wow, we can actually do a superhero film that's not embarrassing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But up until that point, there was no real way of putting those sorts of elements together and sort of making them work. And now we've got Superman. I mean, we have superheroes that cover every single point on the compass. We've got from the darkest, which would probably be Deadpool.
Yeah.
The darkest and most postmodern superhero, which was originally written as a sort of antidote to the actual written print comics, and it was very timely when it came out because the world needed an antidote to all the superhero movies that were about at that time. So Deadpool was written for a literate audience in the printed comics, and Deadpool, the film, was timely for a literate film audience who understood all the superhero tropes, the three-point landing and everything else. Because otherwise, nobody would get the joke.
Yeah. Well,
And
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say was, there's actually supposed to be a Venom movie coming out, and there's talks that Carnage may appear for the first time on a feature film.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and Sony's doing it, so I'm not sure if it's going to be in correlation with kind of the crossover that they're doing with the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they're talking about the film being rated R, so if that's the case, I could definitely see Carnage being in the film.
Just get Sam Rockwell.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic, actually.
There's really what's happened right now is that the being involved in a franchise is so lucrative that you can really get the best of the best. I mean, you've got Benedict Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You've got Robert Downey Jr. playing what is essentially a kind of third-tier superhero in Iron Man. I mean, Iron Man back in the day was never he wasn't a Batman or a Superman.
No.
He was a little bit back there. He was no Wolverine. He was no, he wasn't one of those guys. So what it means right now is you can get absolute top drawer talent to come and do something interesting. And the interesting thing that's happening now is they've realized that we have to change it up. We've got to get good original directors to make good original films, not just the same things as ever before. You see that in Guardians of the Galaxy. You see that in the new Thor movie. Did you see the trailer?
Oh, yeah. It looks fantastic. I cannot wait to see how that all comes down.
Who would have thought that the biggest influence on the new Thor film would be Kung Fury?
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we're going for. We're so postmodern that we've become retro.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting sort of future for that whole season, that whole series of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, I look forward to seeing Wonder Woman. And I think, Batman versus Superman, if you see the extended cut, it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I like some of the DC stuff, but I've always thought Marvel did it better when it came to feature films. But as far as the animated stuff, typically it's been DC that I've liked their animated stuff better. But when we're talking about the 1994 Spider-Man and some of that pre-stuff that was like on Fox Kids, like the X-Men animated series, those were like unbelievably stellar. But it seems like a lot of the Marvel stuff produced today is more geared towards young, like 13 and under, kind of young kid age. They do some of those superhero squad stuff where it seems like DC kind of keeps it more, adult and with the group of people that grew up with it. But everybody has a little different perspective. And I love the CW versions of all the DC shows because I think they have done a fantastic job with the DC characters. So it's really interesting how different facets of media do better in some ways than others,
Well, what's the interesting thing that's happened with Comic-Con, with the rise of Star Wars, the continuing rise of Star Trek, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Universe. 20 years ago, Comic-Con was something that was snickered at, something that was sneered at.
Yeah.
Now that's the core of the movie industry right now. You know, the people who were geeks, well, ladies and gentlemen, they have inherited the earth.
Yeah, you know, it used to not be cool to be a geek or to talk about, yeah, I know every episode from that TV show. Then people look at you like you are a psychopath.
Well, this is the curious thing. The most tragic thing you could think of back in the day was being a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
You know, I saw somebody the other day walking down the street here in Madrid, and they had a TARDIS case on their telephone. Right, and
Wow.
it's become part of the culture, entirely so. That it's no longer. It's really become our new mythologies. I think every generation has their mythology. When I was a kid, it was Star Wars, and that bled into Indiana Jones, and I think there were sort of dry periods throughout the 80s and the 90s, but then it all kicked off again with the Buffys of the world, you know. And I think what's also happened is that it sort of retroactively began to invade TV. TV is now better than it's ever been before, and they're applying these rules of, hey, let's just make the best show that we can, because they've worked out that that's what people are interested in. You know, the demographic is the people who are really into it, and that's why we end up with Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Gotham and Legion, etc., etc., etc.
Absolutely. Well, you know, you kind of mentioned Doctor Who, and I believe you have some kind of tie-in with Doctor Who. Is that correct?
Well, this is very interesting. So, I when I was at drama school back in, must have been started in 1989.
Okay.
I was in drama school. There was another guy there who we became very, very good friends, and he was a complete and utter sad case geek boy about Doctor Who. Now, I like Doctor Who as much as the next man. Come on, you know, Tom Baker was my doctor. What can I say? So I really liked it, and I loved talking to him about it. And you know that thing that kids do. Can you imagine? Like if Rutger Hauer was the Doctor? Can you imagine how good that would be? Can you imagine? Right? You know, we'd have those conversations.
Yeah.
You know, being adults and everything, we would have those conversations. So we both moved to London at the same time. And we'd meet up for coffee in the center of town, and he'd turn up late because he was at Forbidden Planet, the big sci-fi bookstore, because he was buying like Doctor Who books or videotapes or goodness knows what. And, you know, he loved it, and we would talk about it. Now, you got to remember, in 1989, Doctor Who was cancelled rather ignominiously. Ignominiously. I've been speaking Spanish all day. It's very hard for me to speak English right now.
It's okay.
Lo siento. I'm sorry. So he would always turn up late because he was always buying Doctor Who memorabilia and everything else like that. So what happened was in 2005, they resurrected it with Christopher Eccleston, right?
Yeah.
He's a very well-respected actor. And it was great. All of a sudden, Doctor Who was kind of cool again. They sort of managed to make a show which everybody liked, right? The people of my generation went, hang on, this is much better than I remember it. It touched on all the tropes that we knew and loved before. We kind of fell in love with it again. We went, this is really, really good. They found an emotional core to it, which was probably missing before, and it white broadened its appeal. Well, about halfway through its run, they revealed that Christopher Eccleston was going to be leaving at the end of the season. Okay. And they revealed the new Doctor. I don't know if you watched. Did you watch Doctor Who?
I have, yes. I haven't watched it emphatically, but I've definitely watched it.
Right. So do you know who the Doctor was after Christopher Eccleston?
I don't recall, no.
It was David Tennant.
Oh, David Tennant. Yeah, I loved him.
Okay. David Tennant was my friend at drama school.
No way.
David Tennant was the guy who would turn up late because he was buying videos and books.
Are you serious?
I have never been happier in my life about hearing about somebody getting a job. This guy, his dream was to be Doctor Who. His dream was to play the Doctor. And his dream was to play the Doctor in a TV show that had been cancelled.
Wow.
His dream was impossible. There was no way he could ever do it because the show didn't exist anymore. And I met up with him. I called him up immediately. I said, how long have you known? He said, I've known for 6 months. Right, because he's Scottish as well. You know, he's Scottish as well. I said, oh, it's amazing. Anyway, so we met up. I went to London, and we met up in London. We were in the Soho House, which is a private club there, and we got our private room. So it was like, oh, congratulations, David. And he's trying to be cool about it. Oh, thanks very much. Because the news, it was like massive news.
He was like busting at the gut.
It was massive news. I mean, who the new Doctor is, like Peter Capaldi's leaving at the end of this season, who the new Doctor is, that's it. His life has changed. Okay? All of the actors who now go into Doctor Who, their careers explode.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, you have Karen Gillan, who plays Galactica, I think her name is, in Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, Karen Gillan's a wee redheaded girl from Inverness in Scotland.
Okay? Oh, wow.
Right, and she was in it for, I think, 2.5 seasons or something like that, and she has a remarkable career. And she's become a very, very competent, decent actress through it. So we met up, and so everybody's like, oh, congratulations, David. And he's trying to be cool. Thanks very much. Thanks for saying that. They closed the door to the private room, and we both just lost it. We're running around screaming, yes, get off you. I was like, how long have you known? He said, I've known for 6 months. He said, you tell anybody? He said, yeah, I told my mum. I couldn't tell anybody else. I said, so what's it like? What's it like? He said, oh, I filmed the reanimation scene today, the regeneration scene.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I said, are you doing it Scottish? He said, no, I can't. I've got to do it English. I've got to do it home counties because Christopher Eccleston, the Americans complained they couldn't understand him. So I'm being very English. I said, what are you going to wear? And I remember when I met him, I was wearing a kilt, because I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
There's nothing more Scottish than a Scotsman outside of Scotland. Trust me, that's just the way it goes. You know, I used to bump into Americans, and they go, where are you from? And I go, I'm Scottish. And they go, hey, I'm Scottish too. And I go, all right, how's that working out for you? No, my great-great-grandfather was the head of the Clan MacLeod. Of course he was, yes.
That's funny. I mean?
It's like past lives. Everybody was Cleopatra.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, you know, for David Tennant, he was actually, he's playing on the new DuckTales.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's Scrooge McDuck.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so...
Well, so we met, and I said to him, I said, what are you going to wear? He said, I don't know what I'm going to wear. I said, you need a big coat. He said, why do I need a big coat? I said, because it's like a cloak. It's like a superhero. Wear a big coat. Right? And also because you're tall, it'll make you look taller. So that's the story with me and David Tennant, and David, who's in my phone as the Doctor. He went on to become the most popular Doctor Who, Doctor ever, and really a show that was already being successful just gave it a kick in the ass and took it to stratospheric heights. And you see a man who is just in love with his job when you watch him doing that. And it's the perfect casting because the Doctor loves being the Doctor. You know, he loves being himself. And that's what you get with David. And he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. If you've ever seen him interviewed, that's him.
That's awesome. You know, so many times when someone's interviewed, you're not sure if you're getting the real them or not, but that's great to know that David is the genuine article. No,
David has had an incredible career, and he's going to go on and do great things. I think he's a wonderful actor. He was a wonderful actor when I knew him when he was 19. We played in the play 12 Angry Men together. He played the Henry Fonda part. And even at the age of 19, 20 years old, he had the chops, he had the confidence and the competence to really pull it off. And he's more than anything else, he's a wonderful, wonderful human being. And I understand why everybody continues to want to work with him, because he's just lovely. He's just great. No, but that's a very important thing that sometimes people forget.
Yeah. Is
that we're going to go work every day. Okay, remember, everybody, we're not curing cancer. Okay, we're making we're giving people an hour or so of entertainment. Okay, so let's just have fun doing what we're doing. This is important. People use our services more than they use that of a doctor or a lawyer or anybody else. You know, we as actors, we have a great privilege in doing what we do, and we should understand that we're very lucky to get a chance to get paid to do funny voices.
Absolutely, Scott. Hey everyone, I sure hope you're enjoying today's episode with Scott Cleverdon. Sadly, this is the end of part 1, but we will return next Friday for part 2. You know, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they've voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.